Levy Auditorium. Participants include a cast of 13 students and a technical crew of 7 students. The Little Prince will feature puppets designed and built by the FGC Art Club, so that's real positive there. And the show is to be enjoyed by family audiences, including children of all ages. I also want you to know that we're starting, I think, next week with our faculty on the second micro-credential AQ training called Creating an Inclusive and Supportive Online Environment, or traditional environment. We have 2 sections, but it's things like welcoming students, promoting civility in the classroom, ensuring equitable access, helping students persist, embracing diversity, checking for student understanding, and providing useful feedback. So we're hoping that will make a difference for our students. This is an 8-week session, and it's online. It takes the faculty 2 to 3 hours to complete the very good training. Some are, in fact, Matt Peace, one of our associate dean, he's been through the first leg of the training. All the academic administrators will go through the second, this section here. So we want to know what our faculty are learning and share with them, you know, and maybe talk with them, dialogue with them about ways that we can improve. So I want to go to this most important part of what I want to present tonight and take some time with this. As you can see, we had a very good a previous year where it was really great improvement, and we came up in that high 70s range. And as you can see in the second quarter, we're back down to the 72 range. And if you look at the other schools, though, and you can see Florida during the same quarter for the RN and the PN program is way down in their scores. This is the first time I've ever gone through a pandemic, and it was really challenging in many, many ways, and Dr. Barrett shared some of those, but especially for students in allied health who are going into clinical settings, increased risk of transmission of this virus. There were so many on-the-fly adjustments that we had to make. One of those was teaching online in a nursing program, and in a 5-county district where arguably we have as low level of overall online access as you can possibly get. So it was obviously challenging for our students in that way, and I want you to understand we're not making excuses. There are no excuses. We're not happy with this. We felt like we've made and built momentum, and then we kind of stepped backwards a little bit. Now, a lot of people step backwards, but that doesn't mean we're okay with it. This was the first group that, so the RN to PN group, the PN to RN group, they started in January in the program. It's a 1-year program, and by March, we were in a full-blown pandemic where we were shutting down classes and having to reroute everything to online. And so you can imagine the disruption you don't have time to waste in these kinds of programs. You have to, every day is important to learn a new concept and that kind of thing. The same was true with our group that just finished the regular traditional 2-year RN program. They started and they've been a year and a half in a pandemic because unfortunately, because of the low vaccination rates in our area, we were hit twice. First with just figuring out what is a pandemic, what is this virus, et cetera. And then we had to retrace when the area was inordinately hit with higher rates of infection, hospitalization. That affects our students. So I want to recognize the level of care, concern, effort that our faculty and our leadership in our program gave. I don't stand up here to you in the sense of apologizing for what their efforts are. They were outstanding. I mean, hours and hours of devoted time and work to try to make things work in the environment we have. However, we looked primarily internally. We cannot control a pandemic. We can't control the externals. So what we've been working on are the internals. And I've shared this with Dr. Barrett. That's involved hours. It was just even me calling students to find out, what is your perspective? What could we have done better? How can we do things in a different way? What did you see? What was good? What was bad? And overall, you'd be really proud. The students that I talked to, they love their faculty. They love the program. They believe that we've got a very good program. They did see things we could improve. And that's what we're focused on. We had internal conversations throughout these last few weeks about things that we can do. So I want to share with you some of those things, and then I want you to ask me some questions about this and kind of get your perspective on where we are, okay? So what we believe is that there are lower levels of student engagement and accountability than we want. And what I mean by that is looking students in the eye and asking them direct questions, not allowing students to sit there and not be engaged every day, day in, day out. We also want them to be accountable in the sense that if we see you slipping, we ought to know at day one and be talking to you. I mean, I'm talking about an encouraging way that tells students we care about you, we want you here, but we also notice that this is not the level that we need. We need you to step up. You know, give them resources, tools that they can use to do that. We believe there is less alignment to the NCLEX than we want. I heard a phrase, and I think it fits, and we've said it a few times in our meetings. Too much icing and not enough cake. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. When you look at a book that is this thick, and there are multiple of those books, there is no way in the world that our nursing students are going to learn everything in that book. They can't. They'd be Dr. Tepedino if they knew all that stuff. But they can learn the most important concepts in that year or 2-year period. We can bring it down to the most important things they need, and there are lots of those. There are almost too many to learn of those, but we've got to make it clear to students, here's the cake. If you get the icing, we're happy for you, and we want you to go for it. But we need to be clear in what is the cake, and that's what we're doing. So the thing we realized with the test, and this is after interviewing students and understanding more about this test from their perspective, is that we need to do more what's called SATA questions, which is select all that apply, because a lot of these questions are asking them to select multiple answers to the same question. And if you don't get them all right, you don't get partial credit. You might get 6 out of the 7, but if you don't get the 7th one, it's wrong. They may be changing that in the future, but that's the way it is now. And we haven't done enough of those. And we're instituting those in our tests throughout this term and throughout the rest of the programs. We also didn't do enough prioritization questions, meaning, student with this thing, what do you do first? What do you do second? What do you do third? And all of the answers that they provide are rational, reasonable answers. So you have to know what should I be looking for? What should I be asking? So we're doing a lot more of that. We are changing our study guides to ensure that the most important aspects are emphasized over and over. We're providing more foundation and med-surg questions throughout the program. We believe we weren't doing enough review with those foundational topics later in the program, especially for somebody that's in 2 years. They've forgotten a lot of those foundational things, and we're trying to go back to those. We're not going to release the names. We've told the students, we're not releasing your names until you get the VADI green light, which is a program that if 99%, or 97, I think it's 97%, guarantees passing on the first time if they get the green, what's called a green light. Now it's a lot of work to do. And a lot of the students went through 50% of it, but many of them did not get the green light. And so we're changing that.
And we're telling them up front.
Yes, we are. We've already told them, and they may be upset with that, but we're doing ATA master exams where the students must score level 2 or retake the exam. Previously, we weren't. There have been lawsuits throughout the country on high stakes testing in nursing programs. In other words, failing a student on a high stakes test is not allowed, in a sense that they could challenge us. We can't do it, but you have to build in testing. Obviously, you have to practice with them. So that's always been a challenge, how we do that. But this will be 7% of their grade, and they've already seen the impact of that first testing on their grade, and they've been asking the director or the executive director, how can I do better? What do I need to do? They're pointing them back to the reviews, to the things that you need to be doing online. So with that, I'm going to be quiet, but I would like to celebrate. If you notice, the PN scores are outstanding. We've 100%. We're almost 40%, a little more than 40% over the Florida average, and about 20-some-odd% over the USA average. So we're proud of that, and we're happy that we're somewhere around 9 or 10% above the state average. That doesn't give us any comfort, though, and I don't like to face you with this because I always want to bring you good news if I can, and we've got work to do. That's all there is.
Any board members have anything they'd like to add? Any questions and discussion?
I think this is really encouraging. I think that your honest feedback from students is critical. I think that the clear delineation of what our expectations up front is also an imperative part of how we set the tone. I think that while I gather, I know you want those numbers to be like 80% or higher, which I would love to see too. I do think this is, we've said it time and time again, this is not a normal situation, and so much of this learning is reinforced with didactic sort of hands-on, and there has been a significant decrease in that because we're just getting in rooms and getting out of rooms, and we're just trying to minimize, and so that opportunity to get those little clinical pearls, to reinforce what are in those big textbooks has been diminished. And so without that, you're having to kind of almost in an ethereal sense learn things kind of pie in the sky, whereas when you are in the clinical process of learning, it's reinforcing what you're reading because you're seeing it in real life, and it brings the big picture together. And so I'm not surprised that across the state of Florida, everybody's down. Because if you don't get that hands-on to the fullest extent, then you're missing something. And so I think it's critical for us to make changes to try to optimize the learning process, and I do think that what you're going to do is going to work. But I also think it's, in all fairness, for that 29% or 28%, it's hard because the whole point of why a lot of these folks chose what they chose is to be in that clinical setting, and when you're like a fraction of what we want them to have. And I think this is going to probably reverberate for a couple years, where it's going to be one of those things that we're pivoting, adapting. How do we get this, and maybe something we'll do is we'll run clinical scenarios and say, you've got this person in front of you. Here's what you're going on. What would you do first? Okay, what do you do next? Because those are all things that part where they're lacking, they would have picked up a lot more on rotation in real life. And so, I appreciate VP Dobson, your forthrightness. I appreciate your forward thinking. I appreciate your planning on how do we do better. And I think what you're saying is going to work. And I believe it 100%. But I think it's also important that we look at it and say, frankly, I'm not really that upset about 72%. Because I feel like when the entire state took a hit, percentage-wise, our hit was not as great as looking at it. And that doesn't mean it makes it okay. That doesn't mean that I want everybody to pass. But so I think perspective is important, and then how do we get people to solidify their clinical knowledge? We'll work on that, and we'll come up with those scenarios, and I think next year we're going to be right up at 80% again.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that.
I have a couple of questions for you. So, understanding that there's so many different types of programs that feed into these numbers, what does the USA number get pulled from? What type of institutions, what type of curriculum, for it to be so different than both the Florida and the FGC level?
Well, Dr. Barrett can probably speak to the national, because he has seen programs.
Florida's
throughout
dead
the-
last.
I mean, that's
They're dead last.
concerning on
50 out of
many
50.
levels, not just, our own level, because, like, we're the top of the bad group. But, everybody had the same issues to deal with, but so why is the United States average so much higher?
I don't know that exactly. I know that's apples to apples, so that's looking at 2-year programs.
Okay.
But what makes it so different, I think inputs have a lot to do with it. So you're talking about, places in the nation where the inputs on, these programs is much higher, quite frankly.
So,
they're, in other words, the foundational education they're receiving is
Right, well, so we
getting
talked
further
about the
along.
K to 12 grade, getting people ready to come in, so that's probably some of it as well. You probably have do you get a listing of some of the schools that you would look at and go, these are ones that I really want to explore and find out, how did they manage so well during a pandemic? Are there any best practices that we might be able to implement that might have similar type of geography or challenges? Are you able to, come back to that point and say, this one really well managing through? What do they do differently than everybody else?
Good question, and that's the first question I asked. So I've been more involved in this. Obviously, I saw the trend going well and was thinking, great, we're doing well, and feeling a little more relaxed about it. I think I got more involved when I saw this. Obviously, I've called 4 schools. I looked throughout the state. I found 4 programs that had outstanding results, and I've called each one of those leaders. I've had probably a 30-minute conversation with each one of them. Some of the things that I've shared with you are ideas they've had. In fact, that too much icing and not enough cake came from a sister college director of nursing. And I could tell that the way they were approaching things, was they were making sure that the students had that strong foundation, and they could branch out from there for the niceties of the topics that they're covering, right? So some of these things come directly from the suggestions that came out of those discussions. I've also passed those names along to Patricia Linder and to Dr. Shane Smith. The students that I interviewed, I shared that with Dr. Barrett. The results, it took me probably an hour each student, and I did some kind of running summary and got an approval from the students to share that information. I did not give their names in that, but I also shared that with Shane and Patricia. So we're trying to triangulate, listen to programs that are doing really well and find out what they're doing and copy it, but also look internally to see where maybe are some areas that we need to strengthen, no matter what anybody says outside.
And one other quick question, I'm sorry. So one of the other things that's changed for us is that we're down a hospital from what we were. And does that have any impact in terms of being able to get clinical rotations and whatnot for you? Because if it is, we're gonna have to pivot anyways, based on that's not coming back anytime soon that I know of.
It definitely was a challenge. The pandemic, the change in available clinicals, you understand that's part of it. Clearly, that's such an important piece of it, and we've had to move more to simulation, rather than we can do up to 50% simulation based on accreditation standards. So we've had to move closer to that percentage. We used to do almost 100% in the
Right, that was one of our real
hospital
strengths.
section, but those are more limited. And we had hospitals at times tell us, and we understood it. We're going to have to do something different here this couple of weeks. so we had to make decisions on the fly and as we went through, because they were dealing with, well, we don't want people just coming in our hospital, infecting people. We don't know their vaccination status, their own sickness level, that kind of thing. So, there have been challenges, but I think long term, for the absence of the hospital, we're going to be fine. We will figure out how to do this, and we're trying to beef up our simulation experience. We think we can really do some great things there. In fact, we purchased some new simulation equipment.
I do have something you want to say. So something that you said, item number 2 that had been expressed by the students, our program does not seem to align maybe as strongly as it should with the NCLEX and exam itself. That, I think, is such a key thing, because I've seen it over and over again where that has happened. You can have wonderful teachers teaching wonderful information to those students, and the students feel like they've learned a lot, and then they take an assessment and they do poorly, and it's only because the things on the test were not the concepts that they learned so well.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that is probably a very key thing. And the NCLEX is always changing, like any standardized kind of test. They're always changing what, their points that they're trying to assess and get across. So it's hard to just stay on top of it, those changes. But I think that may be one of your big keys right there.
I agree. I mean, that's what I heard. I know Mr. Crawford led an initiative in our district to do a lot of curriculum alignment, and if we don't show the students through everything we do, instruction, exam, quizzes, exams, if those aren't lined up perfectly to that, ultimately to that test, we're not maximizing our time and that kind of thing. So we're trying to really understand. Now, keep in mind, we don't get to see NCLEX. It's not like they're going to release those items to us. We guess on that stuff. Well, not guess, but we rely on these providers, ATI and others, to provide these types of exam questions for us. And we're developing our own questions. So we're going to be doing questioning, development training, and that kind of thing. So we're trying to, that is a key piece.
Well, those are great comments and questions. Do we have any?
Mr. Chair, one thing, you spent the first 10 minutes apologizing. I appreciate that, but I don't think you had that much to apologize for. But, and Suzanne asked the first question I wanted to ask about the difference in Florida and the rest of the country. But the other one I wanted to ask was, why is the practical nursing program so successful versus what's the difference versus the registered nursing program?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it has to do with the types of, ultimately the outcomes that they have in the NCLEX are much more challenging. Yeah, they're much more complex. The types of questions they give. Now, they're giving questions to these students. I'm not minimizing the PN test, because it's a hard test too. But if you were going to rate them, you've got level of difficulty here and here.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate your candor. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what they do. It's not that bad, but I do remember the days when, and I think back, I don't know what year I was chairman of the board, I remember giving a speech one time, and I could always say, we were tops.
Yes.
And that, I know that's where you're trying to get.
That's where we want to
So
be.
I appreciate that. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask that.
I'd just like to thank you for your presentation. It was very thorough.
Thank you.
Well, I coincidentally had a young client in my office this morning who just came through the RN program here and was saying, what a good experience it was, you got a job.
Oh, wow. Good.
So again, I think y'all are doing a good job.
So can you share with us what Santa Fe's pass rate was, please?
It was high. It was in the
Low
I want to
80s.
say
Low 80s.
Yeah.
83.
Yeah.
83%. I knew you were going to ask.
So, again, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer of the group, but I also recall when we were tops, And, you know, if we sit back and we kind of chart what's happened, what's gone on, I'd like to kind of find out, like, okay, when did it start dipping? What did we do differently? Was there something different on the students coming in? But our competition is Santa Fe.
Yes.
And so, you know, we really got to keep our eyes on that, because at the end of the day, that's where our students have a choice to go to and to drive to and to get an education. And if they're passing at a higher rate, we really do have to be cognizant of the fact that, you know, someone could look at that and go, you know what, I have a better chance of passing and being successful going there. So again, I don't want to, you know, just take away anything from our program, but I recognize the fact that that's really our competition.
And that's part of the reason that I'm not satisfied with the results. I know that we can do better. There's no excuses on that. We can do better. Dr. Barrett, one other thing, ASIN is coming.
Yeah, I think for time purposes, we need to, I'm sorry, but I don't mean to be distracted, but we have a 6 o'clock here.
Yes, we do. We do. Okay. Thank you so much. That was an outstanding presentation. You took a very fearless, searching inventory, and it begins there. You took ownership of everything, and all the boxes, being an old curriculum of instruction guy, that need to be checked from my perspective to move a program forward and continue the excellence. You have them there. I know the state of Florida, pre-K through 12, would love to have these pass rates on the normative test we gave during COVID. It was brutal. So thank you for everything you're doing. Okay. Enrollment and management and student affairs. Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to start out with a quick enrollment update. As of Census Day, the last day for Ed Drop, we had 2,815 students registered for 25,380 credit hours. That puts us down 3.4% FTE year over year. At the August Board of Trustees meeting, I was asked for the state average decline across the state for Florida college system schools. Right now, the system is averaging 7.5% down across the board.
Thank you for that.
There are 2 colleges that are currently reporting a minimal 1% increase. The Keys, so they were up.
That's 4 students.
Yeah.
Small number skew data.
Good for them.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Good for them.
Definitely. We're doing a deep dive into all of our areas for enrollment. We're looking at both our dual enrollment programs, and then we're looking at all of our other students. So baccalaureate, first time in college, transfers, transients, educator, teacher prep, all of those programs, continuing students in those enrollment areas. Right now, we are still seeing the sharpest decline in our dual enrollment program, but we're seeing increases in our first time in college students, which is a good thing because those are the students who take the most credit hours. Right now, that group averages 11.1 credit hours for this fall semester. We're less than 1 credit hour off of a full-time load, which is rare for a community college, for a state college. So we like where that's headed. We know where we need to send our resources. We know what population we'd like to increase, and we'll be going after that. That's that 19 to 24-year-old student who can take that full-time load, can take more credit hours. We've also seen increases in some of our older age segments too. Our 30 to 39 has gone up slightly.
That's not old.
That is not
Amen. Amen.
I said older. Thank you. So we're taking a look at those populations too. Right now, our youngest student is 11 years old for the fall, and our oldest student is currently 73.
It was great.
So
Does the 11-year-old come on campus, or is it online?
it is an online course. He's taking math class online. In other numbers, we made 72 offers for our Board of Trustees scholarships. 68 of those students are registered on campus this year. So great numbers and great yield on that group. We're happy about that. Other good numbers this summer, we conferred 234 degrees and certificates for our summer A and B sessions. We conferred 240 a year ago, 234, 240, right there, right about the same, which was really, really nice to see. Enrollment Services is currently supporting 53 veterans on our campus and their dependents with their VA benefits. Last year we had 56. So we're right there ballparking both of those numbers. So That is my report
Great.
for this month.
I want to thank you, first of all, for getting the statewide numbers. I felt like it was going to be something like that. Half of the states declined. That's just great. You know, it's challenging, difficult times, and I didn't, just as in Vice President Dobson's report, I didn't hear, you know, any excuses. You really have strong data as compared to the rest of the state on enrollment declines in these difficult days, but you don't make excuses. That is so strong. It's a great commitment to excellence, and I appreciate it.
Are you able to identify on the dual enrollment which county is lacking? I know the answer, but I just want you to say it out loud.
It continues the leader in that area continues to be Columbia County. That's where we've seen the largest percent decrease in head count.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I believe Santa Fe is down 6%, by the way. I couldn't see this.
Dr. Barrett's going to have all that Santa Fe stuff. Well, you know, their enrollment is driven by some other things at Santa Fe, so I know this.
We got to pick that low-hanging fruit. Okay.
Their enrollment
Thank you
is
so
driven by a
much,
lot of
Ms.
other
Cardenas.
factors, like getting into UF.
Michelle Holloway, Business Services Report. Mrs. Holloway.
Hello, good afternoon. I have two budget amendments to request approval on. The college requests approval of budget amendment number 2 to the restricted current fund for the fiscal year 21-22. This amendment recognizes revised award authorizations and new grants received in the 2021-22 fiscal year.
You hear the request from Mrs. Holloway. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second by Mrs. Norris and Mr. Brannon. Is there any discussion? If there is none, then all in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same sign, and the motion's carried.
Thank you. My next budget amendment is budget amendment number 2 for the capital outlay plan for the unexpended plant budget, fiscal year 21-22. We are requesting approval of Fund 7, Budget Amendment 2, which has been revised so the report reflects actual revenue, revised budgeted expenditures, actual expenses, and updated projects through August 17, 2021.
You hear and see the request by Mrs. Holloway. What is the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion.
Mrs. McGinnis makes a motion.
Second.
Mr. Lander seconds. Is there any discussion by the board? All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion's carried.
My next one, this is a new item that we have to do annually now. It is our spending plan. The college requests board approval of the 21-22 Florida College System Carry Forward Spending Plan pursuant to Florida Statute 1013.841 as of July 1, 2021. And what that is they took from our annual financial reports, they took our unencumbered fund balance and added the total funds available, which is all of our revenues, without any kind of, looking at any kind of expenditures. They just took the total revenues and then added our fund balance and got the unencumbered fund balance. So 5% is the magic number that the state wants us to have. So right now we have 31.28% with their calculation. Okay. If we were to go to the 5% magic number, we would actually only have $1.5 million.
Yeah.
That would get us about 23 days.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
No.
I am in a fund balance group with some of the other business officers. We're working on some suggestions to bring to COP that maybe we can bring to the legislator later on how we can change this where it's fair across the board, and it's going to actually give us reserves that would be true numbers that we could feel confident in if there were a disaster or enrollment takes a strong decrease that the college could sustain and survive.
And any state in the union that should be sensitive to disaster funding for education, it should be the state of Florida. You hear Mrs. Holloway's request. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion because I've got some questions.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Norris, a second by Dr. Teppadino. Discussion.
Okay, so help me understand, so again, they're saying amount required spending plan, 7.9 million. And then in the back, you've got the carry forward amounts based on the budget. You've got 6,500, which is the renovation on the building, plus some other maintenance, non-recurring expenditures. So you're basically pulling out most of this amount and setting it aside from this 7. So then what then happens to the balance in our spending plan if they want us to spend down to 7? They want us to have a plan to spend down the 7.9 million, right?
Right.
Okay, so, and maybe I didn't look at the math right. So does the 6.5, the 1 million, and the 420 get us to the 7,920,000? Then so it's
It
all
does.
accounted for. So that way we've kind of earmarked it, and so it's not available for the legislature to take from us. Is
There
that
you go.
Okay, all right. That's what I want to understand.
That's exactly right.
Huh?
That's exactly what we.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood it before I said yes. Okay.
And because we're a smaller college with less than 15,000 FTE, we were able to keep our spending plan relatively vague.
Okay, right. I was going to say how
Schools-
much detail you have to put behind
Right.
it.
Schools
Okay.
with a larger FTE do have to say, we're gonna spend it on XYZ project, and it's gonna take us 3 years to complete it, and we're gonna use $3 million to do it. And they're gonna hold them to that.
Mhm.
But
Well, and I know in a couple of past board meetings, we've talked about the potential implications of this coming in place and that we probably needed to have some plan, like a concrete plan of how to spend it for some campus improvements or some things, knowing that the option is then that they might take it back or cut our money going forward. And so, Chuck, if I've misspoken on anything, let me know. But is that pretty much the gist of what we're looking at here?
Mr. Chairman, exactly. I mean, it's what you said is what we've been worried about. It was coming one day. We have all these reserves, and they're going to eventually one day start looking at it and say, why are you sitting on that?
Mhm.
Now, you got to remember, they're not picking on you. We're a part of a big world, and part of what the look is, quite frankly now, and the big, I'm talking about a big 10,000 foot looking down picture is, college, not here, but all over, costs too dang much.
Mhm.
And we look at that and we say, well, golly, why is it costing so much? Well, golly, look at all this money they're sitting on there. And you come to us wanting more money, well, what's the first thing that's going to be said? Not picking on us again. Spend that money and use it before you
Right.
come ask us. And then also maybe use it to try to reduce, which we know we have to raise tuition or whenever. And so that, once again, I'm talking about a big overview, doesn't apply to us. But that's what we're looking at, not on a statewide basis, but on a nationwide basis, is what are we going to do about the cost of college versus when I went in the 80s and what it costs now, why is this happening? So they're looking into all these things. But you hit the nail on the head when you said, we knew this day was coming.
Right.
And
Well,
it's
and I
gonna
mean,
come quicker
philosophically,
if we don't spend
Philosophically, I don't think any non-for-profit should be taking taxpayer dollars or donor dollars and funding reserves.
Right.
That's not, that's not our mission. Our mission is to take those dollars and employ it in the education and for our students and for the betterment of our community. So, I don't, again, if they start pulling money back, we have to be prepared for it. But having a concrete plan of really what we want to do with it makes sense, because the day is coming. We're just on the starting path to it, but these other colleges are probably going to have to start spending it down. And so we need to start thinking about really what we would want to spend it on that's for the betterment of the students of the campus. So,
Right. We do have one sister college that has that magic 5%. They have 9.6 days of
Oh, that's so
operating
scary.
cash.
You have to 1.5 times operating
Yes.
in the, reserve. I mean, every non-for-profit I'm in has at least 90 days. One non-for-profit than the treasurer requires 1.5 times of your expense budget in reserves.
Right.
And so, but you know, it's hard to go out and ask for donor money for Lee, and if, you know, if we're sitting on foundation money we don't spend, or if we're sitting on reserves from taxpayers and they're not seeing the value of what we're doing here. But, you know, clearly keeping the tuition low. So even if we end up like defraying like tuition costs with reserves, that's I would think a valid use of some of those funds.
And even with our current fund balance, we have 141 days of operating cash.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more?
Yes, please.
And I agree with everything you're saying, and I totally agree that number's too low. So, there's maybe we have to
Right.
But as a parent, with a child that keeps dragging around and still in graduate school, when I
One
write a
coming up.
check for nearly $1,700 for a 3-credit-hour class, and I'm talking about the University of Florida, not picking on us, because we do great with what we do. I wonder what in the world. You know, $1,700 take a 3-hour class. That's not counting the books. So everybody's saying that, and there are a lot of people up there clamoring about it a lot more than I am. So we have, as Suzanne said, we've got to keep that in mind. We've got to have a plan to try to use some of that money, because it won't give it back.
Yeah.
This hour.
It's not good. They're not going to change their mind and go
No,
your direction.
not soon, I don't
It's
think.
just how long they take to implement it.
Okay, well, thank you. That's great conversation. Any other discussion? We have the motion and second. All in favor of that motion, members of the board, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same sign, and the motion is carried. And we're on to the president's report, who's going to bring us home in time for 6 o'clock.
I don't know if I can. I have to leave them. You want to eliminate a few of them, or do you want to?
Talk fast. You're
Okay, all right, so here we are. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for being here. Two things before Mr. Pinchuk does his presentation. We have postponed the last 2 meetings, the annual review of the Florida Gateway College mission statement. It is in your packet. The mission statement changed 2 years ago to add diverse communities to it. We have not changed it in a year. It is the preview of, it's mandated by the state legislature and by statute that you as trustees review the mission statement each year. And I would make a motion that, I would ask you to make a motion, someone make a motion to try to accept the mission statement, or if they want to change it.
Is the board satisfied with our mission statement as it presently stands?
I'm satisfied.
Okay, can we receive a motion? Thank you, Ms. Catherine.
I second.
And Ms. Allen seconds to approve our present FGC mission statement. Any discussion? All in favor of that, members of the board, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. The motion's carried.
All right, now Lee, you're going to have to bring us home. Many of us know that part of the requirement for, not the requirement, but what we wanted to do was have this as a strong community component. This building and this project, phase 2 or 3, have both state support, private support, federal support, and we're thankful. We're going to be celebrating this in the next few minutes. Many individuals have come forth and have contributed to this project, and we would like, the foundation would like to honor them by some name recognition and so forth. So I'm going to turn over the program to Lee.
I will just go right into it. We'll start off with the first. I'm going to read through 4 different names, a little biography, and then we'll do the approval at the end, okay? Gerald Dobson has served on the Foundation's executive board for the last 14 years, since 2007, and is chair from 2009 to 2013. Gerald is a key member of the Baker County community, as he served as the city manager for the city of McClenny for 43 years to the day, May 1st, 1970 to May 1st, 2013. As legend has it, Gerald told his wife on the first day on the job, "Babe, there are a lot of problems, sewer issues, unpaved sidewalks, road issues, etc. So I may only last 1 year, but we'll figure it out what to do from there." That 1 year turned into a few more than he thought. Gerald has continued to be a great resource for the foundation and college, and was a tremendous help when this very property was expanded for this project. And for that, we request the approval of the naming of the James Gerald Dobson Classroom Building near the new firing range. The next name, our very own Catherine McGinnis, has served as a trustee for the Florida Gateway College since 1999, and has served on the Foundation's executive board as appointed by the trustees on and off since that year, and as many years as a member of the Foundation Scholarship Committee. Catherine was instrumental in the Dixie Education Foundation establishing 3 endowed scholarships with the foundation. And I always say that Dixie's our smallest county, but they raise the most amount of money each year. Catherine has an extreme passion for students and making sure every student from Dixie County gets an opportunity to go to college. She was very helpful in FGC receiving the 2 classroom buildings from Dixie County now located at the firing range. And for that, we request the approval of the naming of one of those buildings to be the Catherine McGinnis Classroom Building. This one I'm going to try to shorten up a little bit here. We had a donor for the last couple of years come to us, and I'll read this now. Mr. Aloysius Harder and Miss Grace Kenley were married Sunday, July 3rd, 1955. At that time, Mr. Harder had attended the New Mexico Military Institute, became a major in the United States Army, and was stationed in Germany, and was actually a POW during World War II. He served in the Army Reserve and later finished his career working at the Pentagon. He later, at that time, he married what became First Lieutenant Grace Kenley, who was the personal aide and also confidential personal and social secretary for then General Omar Bradley when he served as the very first chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Grace and Al moved to Lake City in 1999, and Mr. Harder came to the foundation in 2015 to endow a scholarship in the memory of Grace after her passing and their 53 years of marriage. Over this time, Mr. Harder has done over 5 endowments with us. He funded the Public Safety Fire Tower and helped with the new STEM building. Unfortunately, we lost Mr. Harder on January 7th of this year at the age of 100 years old. Recently, Rose and Carl Pavey, the executors on behalf of Mr. Harder's estate, made a significant contribution to name this new area the Grace and Al Harder CDL Complex, and we request the approval of the naming at this time. And finally, last but not least, Avery and Twyla Roberts from Union County have been great friends of the foundation and college for many years. Avery has served on the foundation's Gift Acceptance and Property Committee for 18 years and on our executive board since 2018. Avery and Twyla, along with 3 other families, helped create 2 endowed scholarship funds at the foundation. And most recently, Avery and Twyla have continued their generosity and selflessness during the expansion of this Olustee Public Service Training Center. Specifically, their land clearing company was responsible for clearing, grubbing, and prepping these 40 acres we sit on today. In total, they've donated over $500,000 in site work in order for us to use this facility and it to come to fruition. And for that, we request, for the first time in the history of Florida Gateway College, the approval of the naming of the new Avery and Twyla Roberts School of Public Service at the Florida Gateway College Olustee Public Service Training Center. So in summary, we request the board's approval, naming of the James Gerald Dobson Classroom Building, the Catherine McGinnis Classroom Building, Grace and Al Harder CDL Complex, and the Avery and Twyla Roberts School of Public Service.
It's great. Dear friends, you hear what's been presented, the request. We are going to celebrate all of these individuals, this incredible facility, in just a few moments. So I will withhold comments so that we can
You all will have
meet
an
our
opportunity to make
timelines.
comments out there if you wish.
That's what I was trying to say.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm sorry, I didn't-
No, you did a better job than I was.
No, I just wanted-
A very good job.
I know.
So with that in mind, and since it's 6 p.m., I would ask for a motion and second.
We do all of those things, all the things that we read.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Brannon makes a motion that we approve as requested by Lee, and then we have a second by Mr. Lander. Is there any discussion that we need to have before we go outside? If not, all in favor of that, members of the board, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Okay.
And I have to apologize for rushing tonight. I just have to apologize on behalf.
No. Topics for any future meetings, if you would please get with the president, and he will be glad to
I got one other
see
thing
that
on
those
the
addressed.
I
Yes.
still want to get Mike Williams here for me.
We're going to do it next month. I already have it. I talked to him tonight.
I
I
saw
talked to
Rachel
him.
this week. And,
Very good.
I already talked to him.
I want to make sure let's
Good.
get her here too, because
Okay, very good.
So I know we're in a time crunch. We're trying to get out.
Yep.
But at what point will we get an update on what's going on with this letter?
Well, since we don't have a formal meeting, okay, the letter about the meeting is scheduled for September 21st. The city unanimously accepted that tonight after the ceremony. I'll be going to the county who tabled it last week to answer any questions they have on behalf of that. And Each of you, some questions from the board asked about attendance. We would love to have you there. I'm going to ask Mr. Crawford to guide us as the leading person here as the chair of the, he has said he will be there to do some decorum issues that may happen at that meeting for on behalf. So the update is they've accepted. Some of the commissioners are not happy about having this meeting. I will just say that. So
We'll work it out. Anything else about that? Yes, Ms. McInnes.
I just want to first thank y'all. This is a quite an honor. I appreciate it.
Well, we're about to really brag on Catherine McGinnis. I'm telling you. You hadn't heard anything yet, Ms. Catherine. Okay, so our next meeting will be October the 14th, 2021 at 5 p.m. at the FGC Boardroom in Building 1. If all minds are relieved, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We can move on that. Thank you.
sorry. No, I'm just trying to. Brian, I apologize. I was trying to make sure we were on time. I didn't mean it. I felt like.